Hello horror lovers, welcome to the channel Bonfire Horror Story. Today we are going to discover 3 scary stories. Always remember to keep the lights on. Got a job as a police officer a few months ago for my first year or so more, and expected to work night shifts and do 3 12-hour shifts per week. This is totally brutal, especially considering the worst things happen at night. I'm only a month into my job and I already have a story terrible to tell. I was patrolling my designated route between 2-3 a.m. There were absolutely no cars in sight on the largest road. Part of my route was dark, as there was a lot of forest in our city. And then there was a long street called Rio Branco, one of the only streets lit by lampposts around here. All the shops were closed, of course, so there was very little going on at this point. I turned left onto a road more peaceful way to Rio Branco. Driving slowly, always looking on both sides of the road to see if something was happening in the parking lots, I noticed something strange. As my car quickly passed through a coffee shop parking lot, I hit the brakes hard and I reversed until I reached the parking lot. I rolled down the window and I poked my head out to confirm that my eyes weren't deceiving me. The cafeteria lights were on, lit, which was completely bizarre. The cafe always closed at 6 p.m. on weekdays. I knew this because I was a regular and knew the owner personally. I parked by the curb and decided to check the door, and for my surprise, the door was unlocked. I pushed the heavy wooden door glass and entered the coffee shop, calling the owner's name. Something about my voice echoing in an empty coffee shop at 3 a.m. It was scary as hell. It gave me goosebumps just thinking about it because the lights were lit. I kept calling the owner's name until I heard a sound coming from the basement. I knew there was a basement until the day I found a door that led to the in the dark. I strapped the flashlight to my waist and pointed it at the stairs. I knew deep down that it was mine. Work to go down there and investigate even if I was really scared. There was a light switch in sight, so I followed it to the end of the concrete stairs, not being able to see much. Beyond the narrow beam of light projected by my cheap police flashlight, now I was at the bottom of the stairs, looking around at the completely dark basement of the store. And then there was that sound again, only this time much louder. It seemed to be some kind of sound produced electronically and organically. At the same time, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the best way. What do I have to describe? He came from the back room. I entered that back room that seemed to be an office of some kind, and I stopped the sound again. I stayed there for about 30 seconds until the same exact sound erupted from a corner of the room. It was terribly distorted and appeared to be coming from an air vent in the corner. First thing I did was try to direct the light into the air outlet, but it didn't work very well, as the grill blocked any amount of light that could illuminate the interior of the air outlet. So I placed the ear near the air vent to try to hear anything inside. I heard something, and I was 80% sure that what I was hearing was the sound of someone breathing. My heart started beating even faster than 10 seconds. I tried once again to look inside the air vent, this time tilting the flashlight in a different, pressing one eye against the air outlet grill. Feels like the beam of light hit the air outlet grill at the right angle because I saw a glove just 4 centimeters from my face, coming apart, hey my gun, while shouting at the person inside to come out now. But when trying to open the air vent door, it seemed to be screwed down. I could hear the person moving through the ventilation ducts until the sound completely disappeared. To where that output air took, how they got there. Why were they there? What was that strange noise? So many questions that still remain unanswered. I called to request reinforcement. We conducted a thorough investigation. We called the owner, who came to us, help search the location at around 4 a.m. There were no signs of break-in nowhere. Not a single unscrewed air vent or a single broken window. Our investigation lasted no more than a few hours, after which we concluded that whoever was at the Aravia exit's missing. What scares me most are the sounds I heard, not just breathing in the air outlet, but that sound that came out of the air outlets was a sound that could be heard even from upstairs store. Used to work at a gas station along a rural highway. It was a 24-hour position, and I generally worked from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. the shift. No one went in to pay for the fuel, and no one was outside filling the tank. The car was still parked next to the pump, looked suspicious, but on the other hand, maybe were texting or talking on the phone or counting money. There are several reasons. Finally, I heard a car door close outside, pausing. In my series, I waited for the person to enter, but the man just stood next to the car. At first, it seemed like he was looking down, but when I looked closer, I realized he was actually looking at me. Finally, he came towards the door and entered the store, the doorbell jingling as he entered the doorbell. The door rang as a guy with his hood pulled up, walked right by the counter. He glanced at me, and for a brief moment I could only see her from his eyes, before he turned and walked to the snack section of the store. I couldn't see or hear him while he was back there. He seemed to be there for a while. I called, "You need help, sir." I didn't get the slightest response, and when I was about to come out from behind the counter, the man left Canto and slowly left the store without looking at me. Once he went back to the gas pump, Gasoline opened the passenger side door and appeared to be rummaging around in the car looking for something, then closed the door and looked at me again, despite the distance. And the glass between us, I knew he was looking at me. He raised his arms and began to wave me away. Approaching, I didn't know what to do because everything about the situation and about that man made me very uncomfortable. Scared, he began to quickly approach the door, still waving his hand. Arms and hands, he put one hand in his pocket while waving the other. Like if I was reaching for something, I ran around the counter towards the door to lock it, which I managed to do with just 3 seconds to spare. Before he tried to open, it was the first time I saw his face when he looked at me. And to him, I noticed his hand in his pocket, holding what I was sure be the handle of a blade. I closed the window blinds and told him that we were closed. He was still there. So I tried to push the thought away, but I couldn't, because he started hitting the glass. He was hitting hard. Not just hitting, but it almost felt like a scam that would call the police. If he didn't leave, he stopped a few moments after I said that, and I think he walked away. I didn't just check, I remained hidden in my corner behind the counter and waited 10 minutes before opening the shutters again. And when I did, I felt a kind of horror to see that his car was still there, where he would be in the car or in somewhere outside. Paranoid thoughts popped into my head like, what would happen if he was near the back door? I felt relief when another car entered the parking lot and a normal-looking man came to the door. I unlocked it for him and he came in with 220s in his hands. I alerted him to be careful with each other, so we had a long talk about what had just happened. During the conversation, the other car started, and finally the man left, and I laughed about it together. However, when the colleague who worked after me, finally 4 a.m. came and I was no longer laughing on the way back. I went home. I was still shaking, thinking about what had happened. Nothing so strange happened for the rest of my time at that post, Gasoline. My second job was as a Chinese food delivery boy at a local Chinese restaurant in 2008. It was one of the highest paying jobs I've ever had, especially due to the speed of the place and the number of deliveries. That meant tips. It was a busy Thursday at half an hour before closing time. We had 3 delivery guys, including me, working. My boss was always as tough as usual. He told me to make the delivery and come back quickly. The address led to a town 5 kilometers away, so I knew this would be a more time-consuming. However, longer deliveries generally yielded the best tips. I still remember. The order to see just soup and rice on the trip would last about 15 minutes. I parked in front of the house, and I realized that it wasn't the most attractive part of the city. I got out of the car with a small brown bag of food, and before getting on the sidewalk, I stopped and looked at the upstairs window of the house I was delivering to. Had half of someone's face looking at me. And when I say half, I mean that I could only see the eyes and the upper part of the nose, as if he was trying to hide. He didn't know what thinking. I didn't seem like a child. I looked like a grown man. All I could do was keep walking towards the door. When I got there, I found a note on the door that said, "A broken doorbell. I'm sleeping door, unlocked. Money on the table. Please go in and leave the food on the table." The note was so bizarre that I had to take a photo of him. Know how they say warning signs can go off in your head in a second? Well, that was exactly what I was feeling. I took a few steps back and looked back to the window. The person was no longer there. I knew they were sleeping. So why would they leave a note like that? I tried to rationalize. Maybe I was really a very sleepy person. I opened the door and entered the house, leaving the food on the table. The experience made me so uncomfortable that I felt the need to document everything. But the story didn't stop there when I returned. When I got to the car, a feeling of uneasiness came over me, and something made me look again to the upstairs window. There was no one there, and I knew that they should have been sleeping. But the strangeness of the situation didn't leave me at peace, being a socially awkward person who prefers to avoid interactions with delivery people. I slowly turned the doorknob. And yes, the door was unlocked. There was no light there inside, and I couldn't make out where the table was, on which the money was supposed to be. I tried to go to the left, finding me in what I assumed was the kitchen, as I could hear a refrigerator in the nearby. Like I said, it was dark as hell. Inside, I finally had the brilliant idea of using my cell phone as a flashlight. I increased the brightness to maximum, and that's when I saw the silhouette of a person in the corner of the kitchen. I couldn't see details, just the silhouette of someone. It was at that moment that I dropped the bag of food on the floor and walked out the door. Front door back to my car, never looked back at that house. Suspicious. I didn't even go back to that suspicious part of the city. My boss was furious even after I explained it to him. But that's how he is. I did another delivery that night. I came home and couldn't sleep all night thinking about what could have happened in that house. If I had actually gone to that house table, I was working the night shift at my workplace wall pumps. When it used to be open 24 hours a day, there were typically less than 10 customers in my entire shift. However, I couldn't stay idle, even though they wanted me to work in stock when I was helping a customer. It was a larger wall pump, so there was often other person in the building, whether it be someone working in stock or cleaning tonight. I was the only one watching USA tidying up the stock in the cereal aisle when I heard something fall from Oct's side of the shelf. In the next aisle, you always hear the door sliding when it opened, and it was the loudest ever, so it kind of got me unprepared. Could have been a customer in the store. Of course, it wasn't strange, at least not until I looked to my left and saw a man standing on the edge of the corridor looking to me with a blank expression. "Do you need something, sir?" I asked. He replied, "No. But could you point me to the eggs?" He didn't look normal. His face was strange, no exactly ugly, but unusual. His upper lip seemed to be extending a little too much. Almost like a character from The Simpsons. I felt a little uncomfortable, but I had to deal with the situation. I ran to finish the corridor of cereal. And when I finished, I started taking the cart to the bedroom. Funds, however, the same guy intercepted me in the middle of the hallway. I should note the guy was probably in his 30s, and at the time I was only 22 years old, although I looked much younger. He stopped me and started trying to start a conversation. Awkwardly started asking my name, how old was I, where I went to school. And because I was working the night shift, the questions started to get stranger. When he asked me if I went to a lot of parties, and if I had a girlfriend, I told him no. And he asked me if I ever had a boyfriend. While putting his hand on my shoulder, I immediately started to walk away, but he kept following me. I told him that I didn't like what I thought about. I went faster and faster, until finally get to the warehouse, where he was unable to follow me, as he was not allowed to stay there for long periods of time. Time periods. In order to avoid the theft of cents, I decided it would be better to wait for him at the cash register, so he could ring the bell and leave. But I waited there for at least less than 20 minutes, and he never showed up. I decided he was gone, and if he stole the eggs or something else, there was nothing I could do. Now I had to go to the bathroom, so I made a quick run to the back from the store and entered the employee bathroom. Moments after sitting down on the toilet, my heart sank when I heard the bathroom door open. I choked on the urge to say something like, "You can't be here," but no, I wanted to give up my position. I lifted my leg so that it wouldn't be visible under the door. What happened next was just horrible. I stood there for a long time looking at the floor and not seeing a muscle. When I finally looked up above, I could see an eye peeking through the crack in the cabin door. I shouted. Knowing I was prisoner, knew he only had one chance to act. I picked up the stiletto that was in my pocket and started to slide it through the crack in the door, forcing my eyes away. I took the opportunity I opened the cabin door in his face and ran out of the bathroom and the store. I called my boss at least 5 times before he finally answered and explained everything. He told me to call the police, which I did, but the man was no longer in the store. Police arrived. I only worked the night shift 2 more times after that, and fortunately I didn't see the man. I didn't.
Un poquito más lejos, más lejos, sí, tiene que más cerca. para que se vea desde la raíz y todas las cositas arriba.